Hello, everyone. Hail, hail, the gang's all here. What the heck do we care? What the heck do we care? Hail, hail, the gang's all here. What the heck do we care now? Hail, hail, the gang's all here. What the heck do we care? What the heck do we care? Hail, hail, the gang's all here. What the heck do we care now? If we knew you were coming out of baked cake, baked cake, baked cake. If I knew you were coming out of baked cake, how you do, how you do, how you do? Had to drop me a letter, I'd have hired a band, the grandest band in the land. Had to drop me a letter, I'd have hired a band. Spread the welcome out for you. Now I don't know where you came from, 'cause I don't know where you've been. But it really doesn't matter, grab a chair and fill your platter and dig right in. If I knew you were coming out of baked cake, baked cake, baked cake. If I knew you were coming out of baked cake, how you do, how you do, how you do? How you do, how you do, how you do? I hope everyone's feeling good today. We are going to talk about the history of the radio and its impact on the way we live our lives today. So, can't find my words, I apologize. To celebrate the radio, I'm just going to play the oldest music I know, because the radio's been around a long time. And from what I could find, the first music played on the radio was actually classical or instrumental music. So, I mean, that's just not as fun to listen to for you. So I'm just gonna sing the oldest songs I know. So we're gonna start with 5'2", Eyes of Blue. Good old classics that everybody knows. All right, we are going to start up at the top with the origins of the radio. During the first 3 decades of radio, from 1887 to 1920, the technology of transmitting sound was undeveloped. The information carrying ability of the radio waves was the same as the telegraph. The radio signal could either be on or off. Radio communication was by radiotelegraphy. At the sending end, an operator tapped on a switch would cause the radio transmitter to produce a series of pulses of radio waves, which spelled out text messages in Morse code. At the receiver, they sounded like beeps, requiring an operator who knew Morse code to translate them back to text. This type of radio was used exclusively for person-to-person text communication for commercial, diplomatic, and military purposes, and hobbyists. Broadcasting did not exist yet. The broadcasts of live drama, comedy, music, and news that characterized the golden age of radio had a precedent in the theatrophone, commercially introduced in Paris in 1890 and available as late as 1932. It allowed subscribers to eavesdrop on live stage performances and hear news reports by means of a network of telephone lines. The development of radio eliminated the wires and subscription charges from this concept. It's ironic because we're going back to subscription services and television. Netflix and Hulu and Apple TV and all of those things. It's full circle. Here we go. Between 1900 and 1920, the first technology for transmitting sound by radio was developed. AM and AM broadcasting sprang up around 1920. On Christmas Eve, 1906, Reginald Fessenden is said to have broadcast the first radio program, consisting of some violin playing and passages from the Bible. While Fessenden's role as an inventor and earlier radio experimenter is not in dispute, several contemporary radio researchers have questioned whether the Christmas Eve broadcast took place or whether the date was, in fact, several weeks earlier. The first apparent published reference to the event was made in 1928 by H.P. Davis, Vice President of Westinghouse, in a lecture given at Harvard. In 1932, Fessenden cited the Christmas Eve 1906 broadcast event in a letter he wrote to Vice President S.M. Kinter of Westinghouse. Fessenden's wife, Helen, recounts the broadcast in her book, Fessenden, Builder of Tomorrows, 8 years after Fessenden's death. The issue of whether the broadcast actually happened is discussed in an article and also in James O'Neill's essays. It was not until after the Titanic catastrophe in 1912 that radio for mass communication came into vogue, inspired by the work of amateur radio operators. Radio was especially important during World War I, as it was vital for air and naval operations. World War I brought about major developments in radio, suspending Morse code of the wireless telegraph with the vocal communication of the wireless telephone, and advancements through the vacuum tube technology and the introduction of the transceiver. After the war, numerous radio stations were born in the United States and set the standard for later radio programs. The first news radio program was broadcast on August 31st, 1920, on the station 8MK in Detroit, owned by the Detroit News. The station covered the local election results. This was followed in 1920 with the first commercial radio station in the U.S., KDKA, being established in Pittsburgh. The first regular entertainment programs were broadcast in 1922, and on March 10th, Variety carried the front page headline, "Radio Sweeping the Country, 1 million sets in use." A highlight of this time was the first Rose Bowl being broadcast on January 1st, 1923, on the LA station KHJ. That was a very brief introduction of the radio, 30 years of the radio. No one to talk to, all by myself. No one to walk with, I am happy on the shelf. Ain't misbehaving, I'm saving my life for you. Now it's for certain, the one I love. I'm through with flirting, it's just you I'm thinking of. Ain't misbehaving, I'm saving my life for you. Like that corner in the corner, don't go nowhere. What do I care? Your kisses are worth waiting for. Believe me, I don't stay out late, don't care to go. I'm home about it, just me and my radio. And misbehaving, I'm saving my life for you. Like that corner in the corner, don't go nowhere. What do I care? Your kisses are worth waiting for. Believe me, I don't stay up late, don't care to go. I'm home about it, just me I'm saving my love for you. All right. Through the decade of the 20s, the purchase of radios in the U.S. homes continued and accelerated. RCA released figures in 1925 stating that 19.2% of United States homes owned a radio. The triode and regenerative circuit made amplified vacuum tube radios widely available to consumers by the second half of the 1920s. The advantage was obvious. Several people at once in a home could now easily listen to their radio at the same time. In 1930, 40% of the nation's household owned a radio, a figure much higher in suburban and large metropolitan areas. The superheterodyne receiver and other inventions refined radios even further in the next decade. Even as the Great Depression ravaged the country in the 30s, radio would stay the center of American life. 82.6% of American homes would own a radio by 1940. Although radio was well established in the U.S. by consumers by the mid-1920s, regulation of the broadcast medium presented its own challenges. Until 1926, broadcast radio power and frequency use was regulated by the U.S. Department of Commerce, until a legal challenge rendered the agency powerless to do so. Congress responded by enacting the Radio Act of 1927, which included the formation of the Federal Radio Commission, FRC. One of the FRC's most important early actions was adoption of General Order 40, which divided radio stations on the AM band into 3 power level categories, which became as local, regional, and clear channel, and reorganized station assignments based on this plan, effective 3 a.m. Eastern Time, November 11, 1928. Most of the country stations were assigned to new transmitting frequencies. All right, here's another oldie. Bye Bye Blackbird. Pack up all my cares and woe, here I go singing low. Bye bye blackbird, where somebody waits for me, sugar sweet, so is she. Bye, bye, blackbird. No one here can love and understand me. Oh, what hard luck stories they all had me. Make my bed and light the light, I'll arrive late tonight. Blackbird, bye, bye. Pack up all my cares and woe, here I go singing low. Bye, bye, blackbird, where somebody waits for me, sugar sweet, so is she. Bye, bye, blackbird. No one here can love and understand me. Oh, what hard luck stories they all had me. Make my bed and light the light, I'll arrive late tonight. Blackbird, bye bye. Blackbird, bye bye. The final element needed to make the golden age of radio possible focused on the question of distribution, the ability for multiple radio stations to simultaneously broadcast the same content, and this would be solved with the concept of a radio network. The earliest radio programs of the 1920s were largely unsponsored. Radio stations were a service designed to sell radio receivers. In early 1922, AT&T announced the beginning of advertisement-supported broadcasting on its owned stations, and planned for the development of the first radio network using its telephone lines to transmit the content. In July 1926, AT&T, excuse me, take a drink. In July 1926, AT&T abruptly decided to exit the broadcasting field and signed an agreement to sell his entire network operations to a group headed by the Radio Corporation of America, RCA, which used the assets to form the National Broadcasting Company. 4 radio networks had formed by 1934. Number 1, National Broadcasting Company Red Network, NBC Red, launched September 1926. It was originally founded as the National Broadcasting Company in late 26, but the company was almost immediately forced to split under antitrust laws to form NBC Red and NBC Blue. When in 1942, NBC Blue was sold and renamed the Blue Network, the network would go back to calling itself the National Broadcasting Company, or NBC. The second is the National Broadcasting Company Blue Network, and was launched January 10th, 1927. It split from NBC Red. NBC Blue sold in 1942 and became the Blue Network, and in turn transferred its assets to a new company, the American Broadcasting Company, on June 15th, 1945. That network identified itself as the ABC Radio Network. Columbia Broadcasting System, launched September 1927, an initially struggling attempt to compete with NBC Network, CBS gained new momentum when William S. Pauly was installed as company president. And last is Mutual Broadcasting System, was launched in 1934. Mutual was initially run as a cooperative in which the flagship stations owned the network, not the other way around, as was the case with the other 3 radio networks. And 3 of those are still around today. All right, we'll do I'll Fly Away. Some glad morning when this life is o'er, I'll fly away to my home on God's celestial shore. I'll fly away, and I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. When the shadows of this life have grown, I'll fly away. Like a bird from prison bars has flown, I'll fly away. I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Oh, how glad and happy when we meet, I'll fly away. No more cold iron shackles at my feet, I'll fly away. And I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, I'll fly away. Just a few more weary days and then I'll fly away to a land where joys will never end. I'll fly away, and I'll fly away, oh glory, I'll fly away. When I die, hallelujah, by and by, In the period before and after the advent of the broadcast network, new forms of entertainment needed to be created to fill the time of a station's broadcast day. Many of the formats were born in this era continued into the television and digital era. In the beginning of the Golden Age, network programs were almost exclusively broadcast live, as the national networks prohibited the airing of recorded programs until the late 1940s because of the inferior sound quality of phonograph discs, the only practical recording medium. As a result, network primetime shows would be performed twice, once for each coast. Musical features. This is the good stuff, in my opinion. No, the news is really important too. In fact, that's mostly what I listen on the radio now. The sponsored musical feature became one of the most popular program formats. Most earlier radio sponsorship came in the form of selling the naming rights to the program, as evidenced by such programs as the A&P Gypsies, Champion Spark Plug Hour, the Clicquot Club Eskimos, and King Biscuit Time. Commercials, as they are known in the modern era, were still relatively uncommon and considered intrusive. During the 1930s and 40s, the leading orchestras were heard often through big band remotes, and NBC's monitor continued such remotes well into the 1950s by broadcasting live music from New York City jazz clubs to rural America. Singers such as Harriet Lee and Wendell Hall became popular fixtures on network radio beginning in the late 20s and early 30s. Local stations often had staff organists such as the Jesse Crawford playing popular tunes. We'll do Keep on the Sunny Side. There's a dark and a troubled side of life. There's a bright and a sunny side too. Though we meet with the darkness and strife, the sunny side we also may view. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day, it will brighten all the way, if we'll keep on the sunny side of life. The storm and its fury broke today, crushing hopes that we cherish so dear. Clouds and storms will in time pass away. The sun again will shine bright and clear. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day, it will brighten all the way, if we'll keep on the sunny side of life. Let us greet with the song of hope each day. Though the moment be cloudy or fair, let us trust in our Savior always. Keepeth everyone in His care. Keep on the sunny side, always on the sunny side. Keep on the sunny side of life. It will help us every day, it will brighten all the way, if we'll keep on the sunny side of life. So let's keep on the sunny side of life. Classical music programs on the air included The Voice of Firestone and the Bell Telephone Hour. Texaco sponsored the Metropolitan Opera radio broadcast. The broadcasts, now sponsored by the Toll Brothers, continue to this day around the world and are one of the few examples of live classical music still broadcast on radio. One of the most notable of all classical music radio programs of the golden age of radio featured the celebrated Italian conductor Arturo Toscanini conducting the NBC Symphony Orchestra which had been created especially for him. At that time, nearly all classical musicians and critics considered Toscanini the greatest living maestro. Popular songwriters such as Gershwin were also featured on radio. He also had his own program in 1934. The New York Philharmonic also had weekly concerts. There was no dedicated classical music radio station like NPR at the time, so classical music programs had to share the network they were broadcast on with more popular ones, much as in the days of television before the creation of NET and PBS. Country music also enjoyed popularity. National Barn Dance, begun on Chicago's WLS in 1924, was picked up by NBC Radio in 1933. In 1925, WSM Barn Dance went on the air from Nashville. It was renamed the Grand Ole Opry in 1927, and NBC carried portions from 1944 to 1956. NBC also aired The Red Folly Show from 1951 to 1961, and ABC Radio carried Ozark Jubilee from 53 to 61. Maybe some of these are sounding familiar to you. All right, here's one more old song, When You Wore a Tulip. But now we're not into old times. When you wore a tulip, a sweet yellow tulip, and I wore a big red rose. When you caressed me, just in heaven bless me, what a blessing no one knows. You made life cheery when you called me dearie. 'Twas down where the bluegrass grows. Your lips were sweeter than julep when you wore a tulip, and I wore a big red rose. When you wore a tulip, a sweet yellow tulip, and I wore a big red rose. When you caress me, just then heaven bless me, blessing no one knows. You made life cheery when you called me dearie. 'Twas down where the bluegrass grows. Your lips are sweeter than julep when you wore a tulip, and I wore a big red rose. And there's so much more we could cover, from comedy to soap operas to children's program, game shows. So there's a lot of information on the radio, and maybe it's bringing back some memories for you. And rereading all of this information reminds me of not my experiences with the radio, because we have different generations, right? But people's experiences, other patients or residents I've talked to about the radio. And several people have mentioned how they remember sitting in the living room with their father or grandfather, and they would have a cigarette or a pipe, and he'd have to be really quiet so he could listen to his radio program every night at 6 o'clock or whatever. So things changed. Now nobody, I mean, not nobody, but radio is almost on the decline because of satellite radio and streaming services, and I, for one, don't want it to go away because it's how I get my news. That's where I listen to the radio on the way to and from work to get my update for the day in that 10-minute drive, and that's all the news I get for the day, and that's my choice. I could watch the news on TV and things like that, but I enjoy the radio. So I don't know, maybe this is bringing back some memories for you. I know a lot of people talk about the hit parade, and there wasn't was it Lucky Strike? You would all know, maybe. But I'm going to sing one or two more songs to say goodbye, and we'll end with an old Western. Back in the Saddle Again. Excuse me. I'm back in the saddle again. Out where a friend is a friend. back in the saddle again, riding the range once more, toting my old 44, where the longhorn cattle feed on lonely gypsum weed. Back in the saddle again, whoop-dee-tie-yo, rocking to and fro. I'm back in the saddle again, whoop-dee-tie-yay, I'll be on my way. I'm back in the saddle again. I'm back in the saddle again. Well, I'll see you again next time. Have a great afternoon, and I hope you are well. Take care, everyone.